puppies were fighting. That was so funny and cute. And I'm gonna pass my ball to okay. D.
Hi everyone, I'm Dee, and one thing make me laugh recently, I think, just interesting, uh, some interesting jokes from Instagram this morning. I'll pass it to almost everyone did that. Anju, thank you.
Hi, my name is Unju from Korean community, and the one thing that makes me laugh nowadays is just watching video about the funny video about the animal like dogs and cats. I'm gonna pass my ball to Samantha.
Hey everybody, sorry, I'm not gonna do the camera today. I have my family here helping me do some painting and they're moving around, so it's a little distracting. I speak Chinese, and something that makes me laugh is I really like stand-up comedy, and my favorite is Dave Chappelle. And I'm not sure who hasn't gone yet. Malala, have you gone yet?
No, I haven't actually.
Okay, great. I'll pass it on to you.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Malala, and one thing that makes me laugh is actually two things that makes me laugh is that my brothers and memes. Yeah, that's all. Like these are the two things that makes me laugh. And I will pass it on to let me see, Rasul Abdul.
Thank you, Malali. Hi all, I'm Rasul, Arabic interpreter slash community bilingual liaison with Catholic Charities. The one thing that makes me laugh, the funny things that my kids do it sometimes, and watching Mr. Bean videos. Thank you. I will pass my voice to Shafika.
Hi everyone, my name is Shafika and I'm speaking Dari from Afghan community. And my kids, the thing that makes me laugh, my kids, and I have 3 young kids, they're making me sometimes laughing. So I'll pass it to Sadaf.
Yes. Hi everyone. I am Sada. I am facilitator, and it's when I'm watching a funny movie or my kid doing something, it's funny for me. And I don't know who is left.
I think that's everybody, unless that if you haven't gone yet, you can speak up and introduce yourself. So I assume that everybody went. Great. So let's get this started. So just a brief review on what we talked about last week, last Friday. One is we talked about the sexual harassment in the workplace, right? Like what does it feel to be, sexual harassed? Like how do you identify or feel that, who someone sexually harassed you at work? And then also, we also talk about like, that you have the right to report, you have the right to, make those kind of report to either management, or there is also resources that for you to report if that was to happen. And also, they do encourage reporting for any sexual harassment in the workplace. And then also we did break up into groups for group for each community, and we kind of decide and determine like how do we define sexual harassment in our community, right? So we kind of are like, how do we state it in our community, or how do we say it in our language, and how do we express it so that we can understand what it means. So for me, in our Vietnamese discussion group, we did have a brief discussions to clarify like how and what kind of terms we use when it comes to sexual harassment. I think Anne mentioned that we have to explain or describing what it is, instead of, because we don't have a word that use for it. And then other part than sexual harassment, we talk about secondary trauma, right? Vicarious trauma and healing. So we talk about what it is, how we identify it, and then we also talk about comparing between a vicarious or secondary trauma versus burnout, right? So burnout is just something that you did over extended time, so you get tired of it. But when it comes to secondary trauma, it's just something that you experience, like that trauma you experience from secondhand, listening to someone who told you about their trauma. And then we also talk about what are the signs and warning to check yourself if that was to happen, and how you do, or what you do to to help yourself or take care of yourself and then that's how we come down to self-care, right? So we talk about physical self-care when it comes to physical movement, like dancing, go to the gym and exercise, walking, running, compare with psychological self-care that comes to either listening to relaxing music, piano, or reading a book. So we provide that two difference between mental and physical self-care activities. And then the last part is and talking about the code of ethics. So they're talking about the standard different code of ethics. How do we do our interpretations, and how does ethic involve, and then we also compare between interpretations and advocacy, right? So for our jobs as interpreter, we only interpret what it is, what information is being passed to us, and we interpret as accurate and as direct as it is to our own native language. And we don't play an advocate in this part, because we don't want to provide any information other than just interpreting the accurate and the information that have been passed down from either English or from one language to another. And then also we talk about code of ethics, like your jobs being there as interpreter is just interpret information. You don't try to establish any relationship with the client or talk anything outside the information that is only being given by one person requested for the interpretations, right? So we don't try to talk other about how their families, and we don't try to communicate even if the client tries to ask us how we are doing, since majority or most likely the person that we're interpreting for gonna be part of the community that you're in. Just to sum it up for what we talk about on Friday. And so do you guys have any questions or concerns regarding the three topics that we talk about? One is the sexual harassment that was presented by Anusha. Two was vicarious or secondary trauma that was presented by me, or the code of ethic as interpreter by Anne. Do you have any questions or clarifications or anything like that that you have concerns about, or want to or need to explain or clarification on?
No question for me.
Yes, Hannah?
Oh, I have no any questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So If you guys don't have questions, then I will pass down to Carol for today. And I guess today's agenda, we're gonna go, so we're gonna talk about, taboo languages, right, in interpretations, and then we're gonna do some practical skill. After that, we're gonna take a little break, and we're gonna go on to more practical skills for as your part as an interpreter to practice. And then, yeah, so for throughout the day, we're just gonna do a lot of practice today, based on informations that are presented by Carol and Yuko and Hung today. And then, we're gonna, bring that material out and see how we can use that material to, to practice for, as an interpreter. So, Carol, I know you're having issues with your microphone earlier.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, that's a lot better.
Okay, then
Great.
that's good.
I'm gonna pass you to your part now with taboo language and practice.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So today I'm going to present taboo language. So first, what is taboo language? So as an adjective, it means that it is prohibited or restricted by social custom. And taboo language means words and phrases that are generally considered inappropriate. So basically, these words are normally we don't really use a whole lot, and definitely that your teacher not going to teach you in English class. So then you will ask, like, why do we want to put this in our skill learning, today? Well, because this we are if you're interpreting for domestic violence and sexual assault victims, there's going to be, there's going to be a lot of like a verbal abuse that you have to report, and or if you're working with like a sexual assault nurse examiner, and you need to be able to ask the client what happened, and if she's if she was raped, and how it was raped, all these details you need to be able to provide to the nurse or the detective, and for them. So you need to, even though this language you don't really use or learn in English class, you will have to know these words if you want to work with DV or sexual assault clients. And so let's do a quick practice. So for this practice, I need everybody just for this time being, can you please turn the your video on? So what I'm going to do is, if you spot the taboo words, if you can raise your hand, so I know that you guys kind of know what a taboo word is. Just the one that you can, if you can turn on your video for now for just this quick practice, go ahead and do that. And then if you don't know the word, please just stop me and let me know. Okay, here we go. T-shirt. Kitchen. Puppy. Card. Whore. Okay, does everybody know what whore means? Okay, so whore is a so basically whore is, do you know the word slut? Okay, so it's another word for slut. And some people, if you like it for sex, or like basically means the woman, someone that sleep around. Actually can describe a man or woman. And then some people said they call them whore if they like they will call a prostitute whore too, because basically they do it for money, and so it's a bad word. It is a taboo word, and normally you won't learn that from the English class for sure. Okay, and one more. Cunt. Okay. All right. So does everybody know what this word is? Okay. So this actually, for me, I didn't have feeling for it because I didn't know what it means. So I actually had to consult my husband and say, what is this? So people that grew up here, they will see this word, they'll be like, oh. So the word literally means vagina, but they call a woman cunt. So it's like the worst way you can call a woman. Does everybody know a word bitch? Like you hear that a lot, I call a woman bitch, right? Well, this is a lot worse than that. And then I guess like, I think I've seen it before, like you seen, for example, they like the Trump supporters, like during the the election period, like before the election, the campaign, like the Trump supporters call Hillary Clinton cunt a lot in the, just like really mean, really nasty way to, address a woman. So yeah, this is definitely is a taboo word. So if you know bitch, this word is like 100 times worse than that word, right? So let's say, a husband calls a wife cunt, and you don't know what that means. And, then that will create a problem because you're trying to report, and you cannot really tell, you cannot really describe how severe, that verbal abuse is, that husband, gave to the wife or something like that. So this is just a quick example, like, to let you know that if you're helping a DV or SA client, it is quite important to know to learn these taboo words. So these are the list of taboo words that we normally see or hear. Like from, oh yeah, you can go ahead and turn the video off if you want now. Okay. Oh, unless, but if you there's a word you don't know, I just shout out, I don't know, and I will explain. Okay. There's some other example of the words, and a lot of times you will hear these when you are helping a victim, a client. Asshole, bitch, breast, oral sex. Okay, and it's all quiet now, so I'm assuming nobody has questions, right? Because I can't fit all the screen here, so I don't know if anybody waved at me, so just shout out if you don't know a word. Shit, fuck, rape, faggot. Okay, faggot is there's another slang to call a homosexual person, and it's really bad way to address that, like a gay, gay person, homosexual, like faggot is really, it's a very bad way. It's almost calling bitch. And this is like a really mean way to call, like, someone as, like a homosexual person. Okay, vagina wall, penetrate, molest, sodomize. Okay, so sodomize, actually I didn't know this word, I had to look it up, but the common name for this is just anal sex. Do you know what anal sex is? Okay, so this is another word that we don't really normally see that. A nigger, lesbian, penis, chink. Okay, so yeah, so these are the words, that we normally see. There are a lot more, of course, and yeah, so I mean, it's the meaning are kind of, some people find it very like feel offended when you when you say these words, you feel kind of offended, you kind of like don't want to hear it. Yeah, that's the taboo word. Okay, so compared to taboo words, there are examples of aversive words. So these are the words that give you like a negative feeling, like a negative reaction. So for example, anger, assault, cancer is something like, you really don't like, crime, cruel, danger, death, disease. So far, okay, right? Nobody has problem with these words. These are more common words, like, you're taught in class. Fight, kill, murder, pain, poison, slavery, suicide, and war. So these are just like, you learn these words, in class, in your book, and these just words that have a more negative meaning or feeling to it. Next, neutral word. So neutral words, really, you don't really feel much about it. Or you don't, it's just a word. Okay, for example, orange, violin, fruit, truck, spoon, music, television, application, book, pillow, morning, job. So I disagree with job because I didn't do the slide, but a job for me is I think for me is a worthy word sometimes, because it's kind of associated with stress and all that. But anyway, that's just my opinion. But anyways, that's next word: jump, soon, memory, and sour. Okay, so these are some examples of neutral words, things that you don't really have a particular feeling to. All right, so I'm going to go through some research results that tell us about the impact of taboo words and how that's going to help us as an interpreter. So lengthens processing. So the research shows language processing time increased for target words that were preceded by the taboo prime words rather than the neutral words. So basically, if you say something, if you hear a taboo word first, that creates more time to, process, for your brain to process what's followed afterwards. Let's say, like my husband came home and said, "Fuck, I broke my tire today on the road," or like, something like that. But all I hear was "fuck," and then and that would be like, most of the time I think if you hear a coworker or friend comes in and say that, first thing is, "Oh fuck," like da 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 da. I'm sure 8 out of 10 times you'll be like, "What?" Because all you remember was that, the F word and then nothing else. So basically this says about this, kind of just tells us about that. It takes a little bit more time. So when you are interpreting with the taboo words in there, you need to focus a little bit more. Okay. Appropriateness plays a part. Well, okay. Linguistic appropriateness, the extent to which an utterance to something said is perceived as suitable for a particular purpose and a particular audience in a particular social context. So yeah, it just basically, so linguistic appropriateness primes our brain for interpretation. I think it's just whatever suitable for that situation and all that, it's just, you prepare, you help you for interpretation. Emotion competes with focus. So this is what I kind of like, goes back to what I said earlier. So taboo words most emotionally evocative of language stimuli. So taboo words, it give you like emotionally stimulate your brain the most. So after you hear that word, you take you more focus trying to listen and process the rest of it. And then research also showed decreases attention and memory. So participants' memory and attentional resources were diminished as their attention was increasingly allocated to the taboo words. That's just the same thing what I said earlier. Conversely, as their likelihood of taking offense decreases, the detail became more memorable due to the emotional condition, but non-threatening taboo words. It's basically saying the same thing. And utterance shock value rises as a function of situational factors and an individual audience members' propensity for offense. So basically, I mean, different audiences are offended by different words. Yeah, so let me see, I think that's tied to the next one, the next research. Reactivity to taboo words in bilingual people. So the research showed that the participants rated themselves as more anxious after reading the taboo words in their own language one. I guess that's a mother tongue, their first language, than their second language. But Turkish participants reacted quite strongly to English taboo phrases too, not just in Turkish ones. So Social emotive force of deviation from social norm has a large effect no matter language 1 or language 2. Greatest reactivity was to taboo words in both languages. So basically, I mean, that's like a mouthful. So basically, in 2 different languages, there are the language 1 or their first language or second language, they found both taboo words offensive. So I don't know why they actually, I don't know why they need the research to show that, but actually they did the research and it actually shows that. So yeah, I mean, if you know the meaning of the words, it's equally, as offensive in both languages. Okay, so examine taboo languages. So they have, if you see remember the language, the words before, I mean, it's related to a lot they have relationship to misogyny. So misogyny is, I look it up. Hold on, let me go to that page. So it's sexism towards women. And then you have sexism, which can go from, to men or women, or patriarchy is a man-ruled society. And also, so the next point, it has relationship to homophobia, bigotry, and racism. And also sexual activity of any kind, sexual violence, objectification, and to people who we are supporting and their lived experience. And they are essential learning for interpretation in the anti-violence work. Okay. With taboo language interpretation, it takes the extra work to get ourselves out of the way, which is really true because I mean, like the focus-wise, you can't be shy, about talking about these words. I mean, can you, so if we don't, we get weird and our interpretation suffers. Just imagine yourself, you're like a court interpreter, and then you are trying to, interpret like, a criminal case, and it's about rape, and then, and you're so shy about talking about it, instead of giggling and all that. I mean, that's, it's not professional and you're not helping anyone. Okay. So this is what the points are kind of what I say. If you can't get yourself together, put yourself together and get through with the interpretation and be professional, you can, if you can focus, you can smile when we shouldn't. We lose focus. I mean, all you can think about is the taboo words, and you kind of like forget about the rest of the stuff. And then it's quite important, especially if you are in court. Normally you are doing simultaneous interpretation. You don't have time to write it down or nothing. You're just like translating, interpreting as you go. And if you can only remember the first word and not the rest of it, and that's a big problem. And you can zone out. You can get tense without noticing. Exhibit anxious behavior, biting nails, stop biting nails, or something like that. In general, decrease the quality of our community interpretation. So here are some tools that can help you. Unique dictionary, social media comments, educational organizational websites, movies, international online stores for sex toys. Honestly, I never really used this one, but if you want to check it out, sure, medical dictionaries for body parts, new articles, repetition of what is harder for you. Yeah, so like, for example, I mean, like, the slides earlier, we have there's some words that we don't normally use and you have to look it up and it's harder to pronounce or something. Just say that, practice as much as you can. And then, okay, so here, any questions or that you have? Okay, so yeah, this is pretty straightforward. So I think I can share some of the stories of why I find this that's helpful. So for example, like if you let's say you help a victim, go to see a sexual assault nurse nurse examiner, and to help fill out a report. And then sometimes you get a report, right? And then you can read through it, and then like there's always like really like words, just like you prepare for any interpreter. You just learn the words that discussing there. I mean, there's a lot of words that I never knew before, and then right now you have cell phone, always have like a app to help you translate. That if you don't know any words and you hear a word you're not sure, just always ask. Always look it up. And then because you report, the more detailed report that you can help the client give, the better it is for client's case. So like anything like the penis, penetrate, all that, you think it's nasty words, but it needs to be reported. What the husband make her do, and so that I know it's kind of it's sometimes it can be kind of disgusting, but you had to just kind of overcome that kind of you need to be professional. You need to be able to get it over to the the whoever's doing the reporting, and then help tell the client's story. You can't be shy, otherwise the judge will probably say, oh, there's no big deal, it's really not big of a crime, that kind of things, and it's really unfair to the client. Yeah, and then like a medical report, a lot of medical reports, they have, you read through it and make sure that you learn the words that you don't know, and just to prepare yourself. And like, the earlier that slide, like the taboo words, if you never sing it before, try to learn it, the slang and all that stuff, because, and don't try to adjust the wording of it. You can't say like, she said, oh, she called, like that's say like, you can't say that just because you don't want to say the word. Like, let's say, oh yeah, she said, oh yeah, husband called me a cunt, and then you like, when you translate later, because when you're, my experience is, if I have officer there and I'm there to interpret, I'm just talking to the client, right? So I'm talking to the client, and the officer normally just, the officer zone out. He's telling, here's the app and all that. It's not like he's even listening, right? So later on, I had to get the whole story over to the police officer, and it just because you don't want to say the word cunt, and you're like, oh, he called me a bad woman. And then like a word cunt and a bad woman is very different, So I'm just saying, like, you need to be able to show that, and try to interpret and translate, everything exactly. That will be the best. Yeah, and then just be professional, and because if you start being shy or start, feeling kind of awkward and stuff, you're gonna affect your client as well. So, but anyways, anybody has questions? Right? How do I do with time? Okay.
So I'm guessing there's no questions. Thank you so much, Carol. We will be having our break for 15 minutes. I'll see you at 2. Please come back at 2. And then Hong is going to be presenting next.
Yuko.
Sorry, Yuko.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Okay, see you in 15 minutes. Hey, Mabuba. Is everybody back? Ooh, I see everybody. Mabuba, can I start or should I wait a couple more minutes? You are muted.
Let's give it another minute, just one more minute, and then you can start.
Okay. Can you open my slide? Maybe the first page, very first page.
It's open, isn't it? I'm doing a screen share right now.
Yeah, I see 3 slides.
Okay, hold on, let me do it again. So is it good? Do you see
Yeah,
it?
that's good. Great. Thank you. Seems like everybody's here. All right. May I start? Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Yuko Kobayashi. I'm the case manager at this agency. I have 2 children. One is 17 years old boy, and the other one is 14 years old girl. They are bilingual and they speak both English and Japanese. I have been always super jealous of bilingual people, and I always wanted to become fluent in English when I was growing up. And I tried my best, but somewhere along the way, I kind of gave up trying to be perfect because after all, I can kind of communicate and I can talk to people in daily situation. That seemed to be enough for me. Still, when I look at the true bilingual, I wish I could do the same. I wish I could speak perfect English. There are so many people growing up with monolingual and English is a second language, just like me in New Mexico. I am very happy to meet you all who is willing to help people struggling with language barrier. So today, I am going to cover the topic of the basic skills for interpretation to improve your interpretation skills. And we are also going to cover why they're important skills to learn. And I'm gonna add a little bit of practice there. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So first, I want you to look at the 3 pictures on the slide. I'm going to ask about the body positionings here, and I want to ask Russell and Wency what images you guys get from these pictures from the body positionings. You can just tell me what kind of image you get.
What you mean? Which one is the most perfect picture?
No, just see all those pictures and what kind of images you get from each one of those pictures.
Yeah, the one like a meeting, the 3 person, is I think is the good one, good body position for interpretation. The second one, the girl and the boy is like they sitting on cafe. It's not the body position, it's not the perfect one. The one with President Trump, I think also for the who is the interpretation, I think the girl, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. You could
Yeah.
see her.
Yeah, which is also good
Mhm.
body position.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Quincy, are you there?
Yes.
What do you feel? Like what
I was thinking the one with the Donald Trump, the president. That one is more like the most formal one because the interpreter is just, having a notebook and pen and everything. The one with the business people, the bottom right, I'm not sure if there's an interpreter or they're just all business partners. I can't tell. But that one is kind of semi-casual. And then the top one, I don't know, I don't know what's the relationship and the stuff. It just, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. Like, are they communicating or she's not willing to be there? Or
Right. She's not even interested.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Ramsey and Russell. So as they just shared, how they could imagine from these pictures, body positionings can convey a wealth of information about how a person is feeling, as well as hints about personality, such as whether a person is confident, open, or submissive. Sitting up straight, for example, may indicate that a person is focused and paying attention to what's going on. So have you ever noticed when someone is not interested in what you are saying, or maybe when you are not interested in those conversations, maybe your whole entire body faces towards to the exit, just like this lady. She's not even interested in that conversation. She's turning to the other side. So the body position is very important to show what you're feeling and what you are thinking. What I would like to say here is to be always attentive. I also would like to talk about where you sit for interpretation. As a professional interpreter, as you can see on the picture with President Trump, interpreter should sit to the side and slightly behind from the target language speaker whenever possible. This emphasizes the message, not the interpreter. It reduces distraction and allows the parties to engage each other, not the interpreter. So when a language barrier exists, the presence of a professional interpreter is crucial. A professional interpreter facilitates unobstructed communication, and when this is done right, a good interpreter begins to become transparent as they act as a conduit or bridge for the conversation. So can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So from the body positioning, I'd like you to remember to sit to the side and slightly behind the target speaker and be attentive. And next, I'm going to talk about the speaking in first person. So can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so when we interpret, trained interpreters should always interpret in first person. What do we mean by first person? When we talk about personal pronouns or subject pronouns, the speaker is important, and who the speaker is speaking to is important. And this is how we can tell if something is first. When I say I speak or I speak with friends, it is called the first person, and this is where we use for the singular, I, and for the plural, we. So we use I and we to say first person. Let me give you an example. So if the target speaker said, I went to bed at 10 p.m. last night, normally when we explain what the target speaker said to the other party, we would say, oh, he said he went to bed at 10 p.m. last night. But that is using third person. The professional way is to repeat just as what the target speaker said and speaking in first person. So like if he said, I went to bed at 10 p.m. last night, and you repeat, I went to bed at 10 p.m. last night. This is the standard of professional interpretation. what happens is when we interpret in first person, it allows the interpreter to become transparent and allows for a more accurate message to be conveyed and reduces third person confusion. Let me share my experience. So I have tested with using in first person. The both speakers were facing to, the first person and in third person with the same place before and at the same place. When I used in third person, the both speakers were facing to me. However, when I switched to the first person, very interesting, but they started looking at each other and I became transparent. So I want you to remember from here is to interpret always, always in first person. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So from here, foster direct communication between target speaker and provider. So capture and communicate accurate meaning, and professional interpreters should never add, omit, substitute, and change any part of the message, even it seems redundant, irrelevant, or rude. Carol explained earlier, taboo language. We never add, omit, or change it. When an interpreter adds or omits, it generally takes away from the message. It eliminates useful information and can change the intent of the message. So can you go to the next slide, please? Yes, so from this side, I would like you to remember to not add, omit, substitute, or change what the target language speaker said. And I would like you to go to the next slide, please. And understanding of face expression is when you look at the target speaker, does she look mad or he looks angry, upset, excited, happy? Improving ability to read facial expression leads to the better interpretation. So Mabuba, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So I would like to ask everybody, how does he look?
Nervous.
Does he look nervous? Okay. What else?
Exciting.
He looks exciting. Okay, great.
He looks shocked.
Maybe confused.
Okay, so can you go to the next slide? So actually this face is surprise face. So surprise, this is usually like all whole entire world, like there's this research, like we usually tends to move the face like this when we are surprised. The showing by the raising of the upper eyelids, the eyebrows are raised and curved, jaw drops open, and relaxed lips and mouth. Sometimes this picture is not opening so much mouth, but sometimes people open more wider. So can you go to the next slide? How does he look?
Nervous.
Upset.
What?
Upset.
Shocked, maybe?
Shocked, okay. So can you go to the next slide? This is actually fear. So fear can be seen in the eyes when the upper eyelids are raised high and brows are raised and drawn together, usually in a flat line. Mouth is open and lips are slightly tensed or stretched and drawn back. And next, let's go see the next picture. How does he look?
Pain. Like something is wrong, going wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Angry.
Angry, okay.
Frustrated.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. So can you go to the next slide? So actually this is disgust face. So disgust is quite easy to identify if you know what's going on, because when somebody has a micro expression of disgust on their face, you will see the wrinkles around the nose. This comes along with downcast eyebrows and narrowed eye, and raised upper lip, cheek, and lower lip. In this variation of disgust, this teeth becomes visible sometimes. Okay, so let's go to the next. How does it look? Not quite easy.
Mad.
Yes. So can you go to the next slide, please? That was easy. Yes, mad, anger. The possible sign of anger is the tightening of the lower and upper eyelids. The brows are usually lowered, drawn together, and both of the eyelids are tightened. Vertical lines appear between the brows, eyes hard and stare. Okay, let's go to the next slide. How does it look?
Copy.
Yes, easy, easy. All right, so can you go to the next slide? Yes, happiness. So you can see the happiness on someone's face when both sides of their lips go up in a symmetrical way. Both lips corners curl up at the same time, and both to the same height. And the last one. Can you go to the next one? Thank you. How does he look?
Oops.
Sad.
Yeah,
You cheat.
look sad. Okay, can you go to the next slide? It's easy. Oop. Sadness. He looks sad. The sadness is evidence on someone's face when the inner corner of the eyebrow are raised. Another sign of sadness is the pulling down of the both of the lip corners. Thank you. Jaw comes up. Lower lip pouts out. So just reading face expression during the interpretation is pretty important and leads to the better interpretation. So let's go to the next slide. And I am going to talk about interpret tone, intent, spread, and nuance. Why do we interpret tone and nuance as well? The tone itself communicates a lot more than we realize. The tone of voice is the musical notes that your voice communicates separated from your words. Your tone and your intonation are really sound of voice, as if you were to chart it out in music. Like you hear your neighbor is talking and you cannot hear what they are talking about, but you can hear the tone. Does that tone sound mad or happy? So just as I mentioned earlier, the tone itself communicates. It means that we must take care of our voice, tone, volume, and speed to project what exactly the target speaker really intends to say. This prevents confusion and ensure an accurate message. So now I'm going to share a scenario, and I'm not sure if Sammy is still here. So let's go with Parween and Hannah. I want you to find my mistakes from my scenario. I'm going to, with the skills you learned so far, and I'm going to say the conversation. So police officer, can you explain what happened? Oh, by the way, Pauline and Hannah, is that okay? Are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So police officer, can you explain what happened? Interpreter, can you explain what happened to him? Target speaker, Oh my gosh, let me calm down. Interpreter. Oh, she says she needs a moment. Police officer. Okay, no rush, take your time. Interpreter. Oh, he said okay. And now target speaker. Well, suddenly a stranger came inside of my house. He attacked me from my behind. He knocked me down and ripped my clothes off. And he did a sexual thing to me. Interpreter. Well, she says she was raped. Okay, so Hannah and Pauline, I would like you to come up with my mistakes, what you could find from you learned so far.
So the first mistake, I saw like speaking, not speaking in the first person.
Right. You need to speak in first person, but this interpreter was speaking in third person, correct? Right. And what else?
That one of officer is like more professional, and it's in the, so because he's in duty and he cannot like talking as a friendly or talking as a person that new communicate to each others, and you have to be professional and be the tune his sounds like someone, like the woman did something wrong and you should find the correct conversation, the correct sentence, what's going on. So the second person, that interpreter, and you should also the same things as the officer do and ask it. You should play the role of officer. You should talk the same things as an officer did. And the third person, because he is afraid and he is disappointed and is like too saying again, okay, because officer is his tone of sound is too high and she's afraid.
Right. Thank you very much. So as they helped me, it was missing speaking in first person and tone and nuance, and interpreter omitted and simplified what the target speaker said. Is that correct?
Yes.
Right. And that's the wrong one. So now who should I pick? D. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. So now I would like you to be the interpreter. And I'm going to use the same scenario, but I would like you to remember to care for the speed, volume, tone, and never omit or add. And you can answer just repeating in English. So I'm going to be the officer and target speaker, and you can just repeat what I said. Okay, so police officer, can you explain what happened?
So I'm the officer right now?
You can explain. So you are the interpreter. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So I'm the interpreter. Try to speak in Chinese or
English is fine.
Oh, okay. Could you explain what's happened?
Sure. Okay. Oh my gosh. Let me come down, please.
Let her come down, please. First.
Can you say that again?
So I'm the interpreter, so I try to explain to the police officer, let her come down first, please.
Right. So you need to interpret in first person. So you just mainly you use the all correct skills to interpret to the target speaker.
Okay. So
I would say, oh my gosh, let me come down, please.
I should say, could you please let her come down?
Actually, to interpret, you can just repeat what exactly the target speaker said.
I have to interpret like, oh my God, could you let her come down?
Let me come down.
Yeah.
So you use the first person, so just like you are speaking to the
police.
Okay. Okay. So, oh my gosh, let me come down, please.
Oh my gosh, let me come down, please.
Great. Police officer. Okay, no rush.
Okay, no rush.
And target speaker. Well, suddenly stranger came inside of my house.
Suddenly, a stranger come in inside of my house.
He attacked me from my behind.
He attacked me from behind.
He knocked me down and ripped my clothes off.
He knocked me down and ripped my clothes off.
And he did sexual thing to me.
And he did sexual thing to me.
And officer, what do you mean by sexually thing?
What do you mean by sexual thing?
It's great, Dee. Amazing. You repeated it very nicely and tone as well. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Great interpreter.
Thank you.
Okay, and all right. I want to practice one more time with someone. Let me check. Malalai, are you comfortable to do with your language? You're gonna be an actress. Are you ready? Are you okay? You feel comfortable doing this?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you. So, okay, so just like with your language, and everybody, I would like you to hear the tone, speed, volume, and to be careful because we don't understand her language, but maybe we can hear the tones. All right, so can you explain what happened?
So wait, first of all, can I ask you, so am I the interpreter in this case or what am I?
Right, and you can interpret in your language.
In my language?
Yes, and please be careful. Please remember to use your first person and copy exactly what the target speaker said.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So can you explain what happened? Oh my gosh, let me calm down, please.
Oh, so the خداینا بخنه غواړم چې زه let me read it again. Sorry, I'm sorry. Can you repeat yourself? I'm so sorry.
What? Can I go to the next sentence, or did you say something?
She's saying, can you repeat it, please?
Okay, no rush.
Okay, it's يعني دغه نشته دی ورختای نشته.
Okay, and target speaker. Well, suddenly stranger came inside of my house.
یو څوک راغی زموږ کور ته یو دم نه.
He attacked me from my behind.
او زه د شا طرف نه په ما باندې اټاک وکړو.
He knocked me down and ripped my clothes off.
هغې زما جامې ویستلې او همدغه رنګ یې پرېوستلم.
And he did sexual thing to me.
او هغې ما سره ډېر یو غلط کار وکړو.
Thank you. I have no idea what you said, but
I know what she said.
What language you speak?
I speak.
Huh?
I speak Pashto.
Who else speaks the same language?
So Pashto is our second language in the country.
Oh, okay, right. I could hear her tone and speed and volume. She did a great job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now thank you so much for everybody for helping me practicing. And now I'm gonna talk about monitor. So monitoring is very important to see if both parties are understanding each other. If you see the confusion, you raise your hand and say, excuse me, as an interpreter, I think there is a confusion here. And I want you to go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the clarifying as well here. Interpreting session will not always go smoothly. You may encounter difficult accents, unknown regional slangs, or individuals who mumble or speak quickly. Never engage in a clarifying conversation that includes the other party. Appropriate clarifying will create less disruption and provide for better flow during the session. It will also prevent the exclusion of the other party from conversation. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So side conversation. So can you go to the next slide again, please? Thank you. So side conversations should be rare and should never exclude the other party. So sometimes when you are interpreting, you speak the same language with the target speaker, but the other one is not. And sometimes like the provider starts searching something and then we have quiet moment and target speaker and you start talking like, hey, what did you eat for breakfast? Oh, did you talk with your mom lately? If she's the community member, maybe you're gonna have the private conversation then, but that should be not happening. You need, sometimes like, I believe everybody here have felt excluded from conversation before when people were talking in different language. So I would like you to ensure that everything is interpreted. That reduces suspicion and confusion. So further interpreting everything ensure the professional role boundaries are maintained. So next slide, please. Thank you. And meditation. Sometimes target speakers struggle understanding what they were asked. Is client understanding the meaning? Mediate. I always say meditate. Mediate if the client is understanding to or ask, and interpret what you just said to the other party as well. For example, if target speaker didn't understand what, do not explain the meaning to the target speaker. Instead, please raise your hand and say, I, interpreter, just asked her if she understands what 24/7 means. And she doesn't understand. Would you please explain what 24/7 means? And the interpreter returns back to her interpretation role quickly. Even you know what the meaning is, do not answer or explain. Our role is to interpret, not to advocate or speak for the other person. So, and I think this connects to the question Pauline brought up last week. If the target speaker calls you and asks you some questions, what would you do? I'd like to suggest you to say no, because your role is to interpret. That's not your job to answer the phone and to give them the answers for the questions. And I'd like to talk about boundaries here too. I have talked about boundaries at different training. So some of you guys heard my presentation before, but I think this is a very important topic to learn. So I will just explain very quickly. Boundaries are rules that teaching people where are lines and where are limits, how we want to be spoken to, talked about, talk to, what we are willing to do or not to do. It is extremely important to clear what your boundaries are. However, many people struggle setting up the boundaries, struggle saying no. Why is that? Out of politeness and a feeling of guilt. If someone calls you and said, I didn't understand about this part of the meeting today, can you please help me? Or if they were asking very nicely and really need your help, it would be very difficult to say no. And it gets more difficult to say no if it comes out of their kindness. Like, think about it. Like if someone cooked for you, hey, I brought you very nice dinner. Can you say, no, thank you, I don't need your dinner? It would be very difficult. And then what can we do? It will be difficult because you think you decide each time. Like you have to think each time, like, oh, what should I do this time? Whether you say yes or no. you set your own rule. I will give you an example with an investor, Warren Buffett. I think everybody knows about him. When he invests, he doesn't take second offer. Like if they offer him $2 million at the first time, and if he says no, no matter what, how much they lowered numbers, he doesn't take the second offers. That teaches people to come up with better deal from the first place. And now I'm going back to Powin's question. Your role is to interpret. You do not provide the information. So in this case, I recommend you guys to explain to the target speaker before the meeting. If they have any questions, they need to clarify during this session. And we do not accept the questions after this session. So, all right, and let's go to the next one. So, parse the message and note-taking. One of the most stressful parts of being an interpreter is the thoughts that mid-interpretation, you might forget part of the dialogue that was spoken or how to say a word. To combat this stress, we can take a note. However, trying to write out full sentences as they're being said is a good way to not actively listen and miss the meaning behind what you're writing down. Instead, write keywords and phrases as you hear them to help jog your memory when you go to interpret. So I'm going to read the scenario. And so please, do you have your pen and notes?
Yes.
Okay, so I would like you to take a note for the important part and just go from there. So I'm going to read the scenario. All right. The next hearing is going to be at 2nd Judicial District Court on July 15th at 10 a.m. Your husband's attorney is Mr. Smith. Please be upstairs by 9:30 at the court. We are going to discuss about the child's custody. We also discuss about the DV case, which violation of this restraining order against your husband in this hearing. Please make sure not to take your phone to the court. If you have any questions, you can reach me at 505-934-1234. Yiling, are you there?
Yes.
May I ask you to read your note? Like, what did you write down?
So I jot down, so the first hearing will be at 10 a.m. I did not jot down the date, but 10 a.m. First Judicial Court. And then this is the case against your husband, Mr. Smith. And please be there at 9:30 a.m. at the court. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to discuss child custody and DV, domestic violence. And also, if you have any questions, you can reach me at 505-934-1234.
Cool. So you just missed the date?
Yeah, I think so.
Great, great. Good skill. So if you missed something, you can raise your hand, or you can just tell them like, hey, as an interpreter, I missed that date. Would you please repeat? So if you missed something, and you can just interpret the correct information to the client. So Mabuba, may I ask you to go to the next slide? So the important thing was July, this is wrong, I put 5th right there, but July 15th at 10 a.m., 2nd Judicial Court. By 9:30, she needs to be there by 9:30. Meet case manager and attorney. Anyway, we need to write down names, numbers, place, address, and all non-contextual contextual information. Okay, so I'd like to go another scenario. So please prepare your pen and paper. Right. Okay. So around 3 p.m. on June 18, 2020, when I was walking on Rio Vista Street in Albuquerque, I saw a red car turning to the right from Rio Vista Street to Sandia Vista Street. At the moment, two boys were playing on the street and red car hit both of the boys and turned, and as it turned. I saw the license plate number. It was T7TYP294. Irene?
Okay, so I have around 3 p.m. on June 18th, 2020, I was walking along Rio Vista Street. A red car was turning right onto Sandia Vista Street. There were two boys playing and the red car hit both of them as it turned. The license plate number is T70YP294.
Thank you. Actually, the license plate, did someone get the correct license plate number?
I'm not sure. I got T7TY294. I don't know if that's correct.
Actually, it's so difficult to, especially for the letters and numbers with, and especially with my accent, I bet it was very difficult to understand. So in that case, if you didn't understand it, I don't want you to just to be quiet and just there. I would like you to say, hey, I didn't get that number. May I ask you to repeat the number? You can just, and go back to your interpretation role right away.
I got this number T72YP94. Is that correct? I don't know.
Yeah, actually, I was 7TYP294. I mumbled first, 7. I don't think everybody got the number.
I got a T17Y94.
But 7 T as Tom, Y as yo-yo, P as Paul, and 294. So if you didn't understand, don't hesitate to ask. You can always tell them, hey, as an interpreter, I didn't get the number. Please repeat again. So this is everything that for my part today. So there are the basic skills. Today we learned about body positionings, speaking first person, and communicate accurate, capture and communicate accurate meaning, never add or omit, and reading the emotions, interpret tones, speed, and volume. And as you need to take a note. And I would like you to remember about the boundary as well. If someone calls you after the session, don't answer. Just tell them, my role is to interpret. So if they really, really need help and they have questions, ask them to call the provider and you interpret for them. You do not speak for the provider. So that's it from me. And I don't know if Hung is here.
Yes, and I'm here.
Okay, so now I'm going to pass it to Hung.
Thank you. Oh, that's Hương. Sorry, anh Đào, was helping me to set up the computer in case room because my computer doesn't have a camera. So please give me, few minutes so that I can move to case computer with camera. It's okay, and I think this is a good time to have some break because, you have maybe more than half an hour with YouTube. So just take some, drink break, toilet break, whatever, right? For 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
So I see you guys at 2:50.
Can you all hear me well?
I'm here. Yes, we can hear.
Okay, we have some intruder. Sarah came over, so I had to kick her out. How do you all doing today?
Good.
Good.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So before we start the section on interpretation practical skills and especially focusing on remote or virtual interpretation, I want us to do just like kind of do some exercise to wake us up a little bit more. Are you ready with me on that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So here's what we all do together. Let's put two hands together and rub it for 1 minute constantly.
Okay, rub it.
1 minute.
Okay.
Just rub it.
Rub, 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 rub.
Now the next step, keep rubbing, but the next step is to put one hand on your heart, the other hand on your belly. Okay, let's do that. One hand, whatever, doesn't matter which hand. One hand on your heart, the other on your belly. And start kind of pay attention to your breathing. Really just focus on your breathing. Do you feel the gentleness of your breath? How your stomach is moving, right? Your belly is moving when you are breathing, right? The movement in and out, and then how it really, bring the air throughout your body, especially your belly, right? Your stomach and your heart. Just feel it. And then some of the warmness, right? You get from rubbing your hand, right? That kind of warmness, get into through your hand, to your belly or your heart. And then now keep where your hands are, but also think about like the energy you want to, give to your loved one, right? Or somebody you want to give the care to, whoever, right? Can be your children, your parents, some of your friends who may not going well, through this difficult time, those who you care about, those who you care about. Okay, so yeah, I just want to a little bit do some of this, just like not just to wake up, but think about ourselves, right? Take care of ourselves, in really intentionally do deep breathing, and also like give love to ourselves, right? Give the warmness, to our own body. It's important, I think, maybe in the previous session. You hear about how to take care about yourself, right? Because this work is not easy. This work is not at all easy. And some of the conversation that you are having with, right, contain a lot of trauma, right? Contain a lot of the sadness, right? Because that's the story that, our clients, our family, whoever you are having interpretation with, right, are experiencing or have experienced. So anyway, I just want to kind of remind you to always, take care of yourself, right? And do deep breath. And, that's one of the way to do that. And definitely remote and virtual interpretation add another layer, right, of, barrier for communication. So, we will have to, be more prepared, right, in doing this work using technology. Okay, so the next slide, actually the number 1 slide you can see here is technology, right? That's the first thing with virtual or remote. And you have to be really prepared for this, because even if we have a good computer, even if we have a good phone, internet may drop, the power may drop, right? So all of those things can happen. But at least we should reduce whatever, within our control, right? Which means we have to be familiar with video or audio conferencing, which means it's not only you and the one you need to provide interpretation for, but also, right, the provider, right? Those who speak English only, right? So we need to have that at least 3 ways communication. So we have to be familiar with that. So first of all, I would like for you to be aware of the technology involved, which means the conversation or the meeting may happen via Zoom, Google Meet, or Google Hangout, right? Whatever the format, right? We have to be familiar ourselves with those systems before we can do anything else, right? So that's the first step. So if you are not familiar with Zoom, maybe you should, try to learn more how it works. Same with Google Meet or Google Hangout or whatever other format, right, they are using. And get that information before the meeting, right? Well before the meeting, so that you can really learn about that and get used to it. So yeah, so first of all, know what they are using, and then set it up, right, in your computer and test it, right? And here's just one example that I give out the link here, which, the Chrome, right, browser, it seems to be the most, accommodating for this kind of, conferencing or, setting. So make sure you have Chrome in your computer, and here's the link, right, to do that. And also they show you how to install it, right, how to, set it up in your computer. So that's the next step, the first step. I'm gonna stop right here and kind of quick check, to make sure, is everyone familiar with all of this or already know this? If we already know all of this, we can just move on.
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm glad that it seems like you are all familiar with this, right? And know that we will need to deal with this. Okay, so then then that's good, right? The technology piece of that. But in a lot of cases, you also maybe be asked to communicate with the client as well, right? And because again, right, they don't speak English, right? They do not know what is Zoom. They do not know what is Google Meet. Then your job sometimes is also to help the client to learn these things, and make sure you ask the provider to pay for you, because it is your time, right? You have to, you have to, communicate with the client, right, in your language on all of this information, and really help them get used to that. So you need to make sure that check with the provider, should I get paid for that? I should, right? And if not, maybe, again, it's up for you, but I would say, like, no, I mean, you should pay me to do that, right? That's another thing I want to make sure we are aware of, and you know, plan it ahead of time, right? So you have to call the client, right, and communicate this information about date or time of the meeting, right? Clearly, are they available for that? Yes, no, right? No, then what else, right? What are your availability? So we have to communicate back, right, to the provider, right, in terms of, you know, no, that day doesn't work for the client. I think we have to set up something else, which means you have to also arrange your timeline as well, right? And then, you know, also introduce the family, right, to the format that we will be using again, right? The Google Hangout, Zoom, or whatever. And then also show them how to do that, right? Set it up, you know, and then practice it or test it. Same thing with you, right? Run those things same as you do for yourself. And check with them whether they have internet access, right? Through either a computer, a tablet, or phone, right? Those are the 3 ways to do that. And whether they are, you know, able to do video, right? Which is like with their face on, or just the voice, right? Just the audio. And then to provide them with the link or the phone number. Only 2 things, please, right? Because sometimes, you know, if the internet, you know, or, you know, if, you know, the computer doesn't work, then we always have to have the option number 2, which is phone, right? So that we can call in. Is that good? Okay. Then the next step, you know, before, right, the appointment or meeting, we have to set up our space so that it is like really comfortable for us to work, right? Definitely not where, you know, a lot of people walk in or out or by, right? A lot of noises, a lot of distraction, right? So we have to, you know, be mindful or prepare for ourselves a working environment where it is really comfortable for us to just focus on the work instead of worrying, you know, the kids running around, the neighbor is like, like, having, big party, next door, whatever, right? So be aware about all those things. And the sound, talking about the sound, most of the regular computer we have, adequate sound, right? But sometimes, they may not have the camera, right? Just that's exactly the problem with my computer, right? That's why, I have to, use somebody else's computer. So be aware of, what we have. Or if, or a headset as well, because again, something to put on your ear, it helps you feel like more focused, right? So those are the two things I think we should be preparing. And also the light, right? Behind you, whether it's a really, nice picture or too like, distracting, right? Too beautiful. And people just like, look at the picture behind you, right? Instead of concentrating on what you say, right? Or on the conversation. So, trying to put something that is not, neutral, right? White, or like just, not too much distraction, so that, people do not get distracted by that. And yeah, so, put the computer where it is, you can, if you plan to show your face, right, then it's like really, looking at you as a center. So think about that environment for virtual. At the appointment, right, definitely be prepared for that, right? Try to have at least 10 minutes before the appointment to try out everything, set up, and then sometimes if you are running from, one meeting and then you are not, get rid of those information, right? You are still like in that kind of mode. That's not the best. And, but it happened, right? I'm not saying that it's impossible, but, it's, the more you have, some of the break in between, right? Different kind of, a plan of the day, the better. But I know it's not all the time you can have that, right? But at least like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, right? Before the appointment, get yourself some deep breathing, right? Some, relaxing moment before you get into this kind of heavy work. So yeah, and always remember about the link for Zoom if you are using computer. but also the phone number and the PIN, right? Because if you're calling in, they are always asking for a PIN, right? PIN, PIN number. So that information have to be, you know, handy with you, right? So that's another thing. And in some Zoom meeting, they set it up, you know, either accidentally or intentionally, right? Accidentally, maybe they don't intend that, but accidentally or intentionally, they want security, right? They don't want like somebody like, you know, hacking and get into your meeting, right? Without permission, without all of that. Because some of the conversation or meeting you are having with is confidential, right? So they want another layer of security. Then they put on some, you know, PIN or even like password. So you need to make sure and check with them before, right? And sometimes they, you know, will have to allow you to get in the Zoom, right? So that those are, you know, things you need to be prepared. I also want to talk a little bit about the differences between consecutive and simultaneous, right? Because they are completely different, and we need to make it clear with the provider or whoever, you know, calling you or asking you to do this. Is it consecutive? Is it simultaneous, right? Because they are different and the level of skills are completely different, right? So consecutive is when you, when the speaker talk and then they stop for you to do the interpretation, and then they speak and then stop, and then you jump in and do interpretation. So that's consecutive, right? Which means you have some time to take note, which means you have some time to kind of think through and you know, kind of arrange, you know, according to what they say, and a little bit more time to do this. And simultaneous is when, you know, they speak and you have to speak at the same time after a few seconds, which is a lot more difficult, require a lot of, you know, skills and practice, and, you know, really, you know, it's a highest skill set, and I do not recommend any one of you to do that unless, right, you are certified with the court, right, which means you already passed the certification, or you have done this for years, right? So because it's a very difficult skill to do, and you need equipment, right? You need to have the equipment where it can really block you and from, you know, the noise, and also you have the speaker, and then you can speak at the same time to a client who also wears special equipment. So again, I really want to make clear, you know, if you know about that, in order to do that. Otherwise, I would not recommend us to do that. And here why, right? I mentioned a little bit, right? You can remember everything said in the sequence of the message. You can control the pace of dialogue to encourage, you know, appropriate time pausing without disruption to the section. We can have time to do notes, right? We can convey the intent of the message and its emotional content and cultural nuance through tone, volume, emphasis, and emotional coloring. Emotional, like really redo it, you know, in the way that the client say it. So that's why I recommend us to do consecutive and make sure it's clear when we get the assignment. Here's the example of consecutive interpretation. I know you already know it, but at least like a quick, you know, moment of how to do this so that we get the idea.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen what happened, please? puede decirle a las señoras y señores qué fue lo que sucedió, por favor?
Estábamos sentados afuera echándonos unos tragos, fumando, usted sabe, haciendo cosas que no deberíamos estar haciendo en realidad. Estábamos sentados ahí atrás comiendo plátanos y otras bobadas.
We were sitting there, we were drinking, we were smoking, we were doing things that we weren't supposed to be doing. We were sitting back there having plantains and other stuff.
Would you please be specific? Would you tell the ladies and gentlemen what you were smoking?
Entre en detalle, por favor. Dígale a las señoras y señores qué es lo que estaba fumando.
Estábamos fumando marihuana. Yo estaba fumando con unos amigos y acababa de salir del trabajo porque salí un poquito más temprano ya que yo soy capataz.
We were smoking marijuana. I was smoking with some friends. I had gotten out of work a little early because I'm the foreman.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen what happened from that point forward?
Dígale, por favor, a las señoras y señores qué fue lo que sucedió a partir de ese momento.
Bueno, estábamos sentados ahí reunidos, conversando, usted sabe, simplemente pasándolo como la gente común corriente hace todos los días.
When we were there, we were sitting, gathered together, chatting the way people do normally.
Bueno, y yo estaba fumando marihuana, tomando mezcal en esos momentos.
Well, and I was smoking marijuana and drinking mezcal at that point in time.
Y alguien gritó, dijo, mierda, es la chota, y no sé de dónde salió la policía, pero de repente estaban ahí corriendo hacia nosotros.
And someone screamed, shit, it's the cops. And I don't know where the police came from, but suddenly they ran toward us.
Y dejé caer el vaso de guaro y el pitillo que yo tenía en la mano, la marihuana que yo tenía en la mano, y la tiré y corrí.
And I let the booze drop and the joint drop. I dropped the marijuana I had in my hand and ran.
You have the right to remain silent.
So you get some idea, right? I mean, some of you already do it, but again, right? I think we try to, consecutive. It give us, opportunity to, really hit or like really mimic, right? A lot of information in the same voice, right? The same kind of hesitation and all of that. So in order to do, to practice, right? And build our capacity to do this. Definitely, as I mentioned a lot of time, and I know you have mentioned it, we have to learn how to take notes. That's a skill, right? And we have to create some kind of our own system, right? Some of the sign, right? You learn, for example, plus, minus, right? Whatever, right? Your own system. Everyone is different, right? Everyone is different in that system, but I mean, like we have to practice this. Memory skill, definitely, right? We have to really pay attention to, what has been said and repeat it, in the other language, right? So we have to practice it. And the confidence, right? Because again, we have to be able to voice out or manage the flow of the communication, including interruption, right? If the one of the speaker, right, doesn't say things clearly, you couldn't hear them well, then you cannot do interpretation, right? Then you have to respectfully, right, say, the interpreter, right, would like to ask you to repeat it again, right? Really, because you better do that than just let the flow go on, and then the information you provide is not correct, right? So you have to build that kind of capacity, really leadership, capacity in a way to interrupt, right, confidently and politely, right? We are not doing anything wrong here, so we have to be able to say, please stop, right, something like that, and then manage the group, right? Because like if it is like a few people talking at the same time, can you do interpretation for all of them? No, right? So we do respectfully ask people like, one people at a time, right? So that we can, help with communication. So we have to be able to do that, right? Gently but firmly, right? To do things like that. And definitely before the appointment, we need to, really refresh the knowledge, the language by, learning, right? Doing some research, some learning ourselves, to gather information, right? Contact information for the person hosting the meeting, because that hoster, right? The person who hosts should have a lot of information about the conversation, right? Whether it is about, a child with a lot of, learning delay, right? Falling grade, all of that, right? Whatever. We need to learn about, not the detail, but at least what they are talking about on that day, right? So, get as much information from the host, the more the better. And then whether they are, using any documents, right? Because or forms, right? Because knowing in advance the document or forms that they are using or asking the client to fill it out, the better, right? So if they have form or document and it doesn't cover or include confidential information, right? Just a blank form, then you should ask for those in advance, right? So that you are familiar with the form, whether the form is like consent, right? For whatever, right? Sharing information, whatever, then you need to learn the language or learn, what contained in that form or document. And any technical terminology that you are not familiar with, right? Because, it can be anything, right? Then you should, know ahead of time and do some research or do some, learning. Any questions so far? I want just to keep talking and I want to hear from you too. Are we good? Okay, moving on. Also, right, as I mentioned before, and I can, quickly go through this link because already we talked about that, right? We need to know about the meeting link, the phone number, the PIN, contact information, right? All of that, I think we already talked about. So, yeah, and then I mentioned here, this should be counted as work hour when you communicate with client, right? To convey the information or help them with, technology, right? Or set it up. So, but do ask, like, how much time do they allow you to do that, right? So that we're not, going like for hour, right? Because again, I'm not sure if they are willing to pay for like hour, right? For you to help with, client to do too much. So, be clear about like how much time they think would be reasonable for us to spend that time with client, okay? So in the section or in the appointment, right, or in the meeting, we need to, let them know, both sides, right, provider and the client that we are, that we are, helping with. And actually, I should not say that because we are helping with English speaker as well, right? We shouldn't just say like we're helping the client because we are helping also the English speaker to understand, right? So we are helping both sides here. But anyway, we need to make clear our role, right? Even if it take, a minute or 2 minutes, we need to do this initial step. In terms of, clarify expectations with people, because maybe they have never been working with interpreter before, or even with trained or professional interpreter, right? Maybe they have been using their children, their friends, right? Their whoever, family member in the past, and they are not, in a lot of cases, trained or professional interpreter before, right? So then the way to work with those who are not trained, who are not professional, is not like what with us, right? So we need to be clear about expectation for people who have not worked with trained or professional or trained interpreter before. Or like, other environment where it's not professional, right? So be very confident, calm, and make the introduction before the meeting. So there's two things, two disclosure we need to make clear, and two requests. So two, okay? So that it's easier for you to remember when you do introduction, okay? Two disclosures and two requests. For disclosure, we need to let them know that I will interpret everything that is said in the section in the first person, right? Hương said, never say Hương said, no. You are Hương in that moment, right? If, Hương is a provider, then you should not Hương said that, the provider said that, no. You have to say I, right? Because you are, the voice of that speaker, right? So you have to say I, okay? So, that's, why I say, first person, not third, okay? I myself sometimes, forget, and I do that a lot of time, but we should not, okay? And then the second disclosure, I will keep confidential everything that is said in the room. As I take notes, it will just be to help to enhance accuracy. All notes will be destroyed, right? Because again, we are, tied to ethics, right? Which is like confidentiality. Also accuracy, right? But, outside of the room, we have to strap or tear up, right? Or really destroy all of those notes because it may, contain the confidential information, and we should not, right? Be, let that happen, The two requests, like, is for the provider and client to talk to each other, right? Do not talk to me, right? Do not talk to the interpreter. Talk to each other, look at each other, right? And, directly to each other. And please speak slowly and pause so that I can interpret for both sides, right? Because I need to interpret everything, right? To make sure the communication between you two, right? Like clear and accurate. So that's why, those are the two requests. Okay, and don't worry, I think we're gonna share with you all of the notes, right? All of the slides. So in case you don't have time to write out everything, yeah, it will be shared. So for side translation, which means you have a form or document in front of you, right? And then you are asked to explain or to have client fill it out, right? So that things happen, right? Then we call it side translation, okay? Because it's not the verbal, right, or oral conversation that you are having to interpret. It is paper, right, writing material. So we call it side translation. Again, this is some of the really thing we want to make sure you know it. We should not do side translation, more than 2 pages, okay? Because again, it shouldn't, because this is interpretation is like conversation, right? And if it is more than 2 pages, we should ask the provider to summarize it, right? It's not your job to summarize it. It's not your document. You are not expert in that document. The provider who asks our client to fill it out should be the expert in that form, right? So in case more than 2 pages and it's too long, and they want to summarize it, ask them to do it. It's not your job to summarize it, okay? Because you are not expert again. So again, especially some legal, right, interpretation, legal paperwork, right? It's really, really technical and difficult to understand. So let them summarize it and you interpret whatever they summarize, okay? And you can decline, right? If it's more than 2 pages, right? Or whatever you don't understand. If they have not provided you in advance, or even if they provide you in advance, you do not understand certain terms, right, that they mean in this specific context, right? Because legal, you know, when it comes to legal, it has to be within certain context, right? How they define it within your own organization, within your work, right? So I think we should be really careful with that. Yeah. So again, I mentioned before, ask the provider to explain the document, and then you interpret the explanation or summaries. Is that good? Any questions so far? So how to do that? How to decline? How to say no, right? To this, you know, kind of a little bit, you know, uncomfortable, right, situation. You can say this: I really wish I could help you out because I can see this is an important document. However, I think it will be much safer for you to summarize the document and for me to interpret what you say. This is why, right? I ask you to do that, or I, you know, don't want to, you know, side translate. You know what's important in the document and what the client needs to know. I don't. So I might miss some important information and put client at risk, right? And if anything bad happened, the interpreter agency would be legally liable for my mistakes. So would I. So again, you know, I don't think we have to go that length, but again, this is some kind of way for you to let them know that you are not comfortable. You don't want to do their job in a nicely way and reasonable, right? So that's how we can use this kind of, you know, way to say it. Step to side translation. So definitely you need to, again, if it is like 1 or 2 page, right, within, you know, your comfort level, then you should really, you know, read the whole text first. You know, try to understand, identify unfamiliar concept or potential language barrier, because some of the terminology in English doesn't have a, you know, counterpart, right, in our own language, right, or a similar term in our language. So we have to really track those out. And then maintain the flow of the style of the document from the beginning to the end of the text, and try to understand, because sometimes writing is more formal, right, and it's more, you know, high level, right, requiring some educational level, right, for people to understand document. So we should be aware of that as well. So here I'm talking about like a little bit about like memory or note taking. So that skill is very important for us to do our job when doing interpretation. So we have to, you know, have good listening skill, concentration. You have to hear things, listen, understand what it means, retaining that same idea or concept or the conversation, and then recall it, or like repeat it, right, or mimic it. So those, again, I think we already mentioned that before. Those are the 2 key skills that I think very important for interpretation. So some of the techniques, right? Definitely it involves like visual, right? You look at that. You see how, you know, the client's face, you know, expression, right? You know, whether they are like suffering or like really nervous, whatever, right? You have to really observe by visualize. Also, like, you know, involve some sense, right? So it's like, you know, whether you know, really, you know, the client body is like really, you know, stretching, or like, you know, like really down, kind of that thing. We have to really pay attention to all those things. It will involve, as I know, I mean, Yuko mentioned, you know, a lot of, information like places, like number, right? That information we need to do. Pass this exercise for today, and maybe you can do it to another time or next time. Because I know I just noticed that Yuko already, you know, kind of do some of this. So I'm gonna pass this exercise. I have it in here, and move on to, you know, talk more a little bit about note taking. So right, we have to catch some of the keyword, right? Definitely you have to have pen and note. And you have to decide whether you are going to take note in English, or you are going to take note in your own language, right? The native language or the target language, right? So, or it can be both, right? So it's your own system of note taking. So it doesn't matter, right? To be honest. But I think sometimes if you develop that kind of system for yourself, you will like maybe using some mix. Sometimes I do both, mixing. So it doesn't matter, but I think, you know, you have to have your own. Definitely verbs, right? The action piece is like key. The noun, right, are also key, right? The subject, right, or the object, subject or both object are also important. The names, numbers, addresses, or some, you know, information that's not, you know, contextual, right? So you have to remember all of those. So I have the list here, right? Number, right? More, less, minus, equal, right? Divided, less, you know, those kind of, you know, signs or like symbols that you may want to have yourself. So this is a practice, and they do have time for you to stop. And I will, it's 8 minutes, right? Including the time that you take notes, and try to practice yourself, because again, you know, you are speaking different languages here, and we don't have, you know, the capacity to do like kind of, you know, pair or like group in certain language group. So I will just let you practice like by the speaker speak and then stop. You know, when they speak, you take note, and then when they start, you speak it out loud in your own space, right? With the mute on, and then we can see how you feel after that. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Okay, so let me put on. You have note, right? You have a pen, and let me put on the oh, it's okay. So,
thank you, Mr. Secretary General, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. I'm honored to be here today. I stand before you not as an expert, but as a concerned citizen, one of the 400,000 people who marched in the streets of New York on Sunday and the billions of others around the world who want to solve our climate crisis. As an actor, I pretend for a living. I play fictitious character.
often solving fictitious problems. I believe that mankind has looked at climate change in that same way, as if it were a fiction. As if pretending that climate change wasn't real would somehow make it go away. But I think we all know better than that now. Accelerated climate change is here right now. Droughts are intensifying, our oceans are acidifying, with methane plumes rising up from the ocean floor. We are seeing extreme weather events. And the West Antarctic and Greenland ice sheets melting at unprecedented rates, decades ahead of scientific projections. None of this is rhetoric, and none of it is hysteria. It is fact. The scientific community knows it, industry knows it, governments know it, even the United States military knows it. The chief of the US Navy's Pacific Command, Admiral Samuel Locklear, recently said that climate change is our single greatest security threat. My friends, this body, perhaps more than any other gathering in human history, now faces this difficult but achievable task. You can make history, or you will be vilified by it. To be clear, this is not about just telling people to change their light bulbs or to buy a hybrid car. This disaster has grown beyond the choices that individuals make. This is now about our industries and our governments around the world taking decisive, large-scale action. Now must be our moment for action. We need to put a price tag on carbon emissions and eliminate government subsidies for oil, coal, and gas companies. We need to end the free ride that industrial polluters have been given in the name of a free market economy. They do not deserve our tax dollars. They deserve our scrutiny. The economy itself will die if our ecosystems collapse. The good news is that renewable energy is not only achievable, but good economic policy. This is not a partisan debate, it is a human one. Clean air and a livable climate are inalienable human rights. And solving this crisis is not a question of politics, it is a question of our own survival. And the most urgent of messages. Honored delegates, leaders of the world, I pretend for a living, but you do not. The people made their voices heard on Sunday around the world, and the momentum will not stop. But now it is your turn. The time to answer humankind's greatest challenge is now. We beg of you to face it with courage and honesty. Thank you.
Okay. Oops. I want to hear from you in terms of how you think about that. How did it go? Easy? Difficult? You know, some terminology? What? Yeah, any feedback? How do you feel about that?
So I was just transcribing in English, so I can't imagine how difficult this is for everybody else who's actually translating, because I think that there are a lot of vocabulary that may not be interpreted, at least right away. I would have to probably look up a lot of words.
Thank you, Irene. For other?
It was difficult. I needed more moment, more time between to rephrase into my language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I want to say something, but I want to hear from other first before I say something.
So to me, for this case, the difficult part is you can't really stop them because it's a conference, and something you missed and you missed, you can't really recheck with them about what they're talking about. So that's the challenging part for this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you, Dee. Pawin, you want to say something?
Yes, so the first thing is the high grammars, and the second thing is the words, phrase, and short time, and the tone of sound is really hard, and because their own language and the high level of the inflow language,
mm-hmm.
and it's hard to catch up and translate all of them in one time.
Right. Thank you, Pawin.
You're welcome.
Hannah, want to say something?
Yeah, I think it's kind of very, to me, I can catch up at the final part, but at the very beginning, I cannot catch up everything. So like they say, we don't have any opportunity to interrupt the speaker. So that's yeah. It's I think it's needs more like high level professional training and more confidence. Yes, this I think in this case the confidence is very important.
Right, right. Who else want to share? Okay, yeah, so definitely you can tell this is a conference, right, kind of setting. And I think this is kind of, again, I didn't look too much into that, but I feel like it's kind of some kind of United Nations, right, kind of meeting, which means it's a very formal, right? It is very high level of, conversation. So they use a lot of big words, right? They use a lot of technical, right? Or like, high level, we call it high registry, right? Which means like high level or more formal language. And they do not allow you to like stop and clarify. So that's the difference, right? Definitely, I think in our environment, the kind of work we do are different from this, right? So this is definitely they are like really the top, right? In terms of interpretation skill, or like this is their job. This is what they do, right? They this is not like us, right? But I just want to give you some example, right, of how they do that and the kind of stress, right? I mean, again, definitely you can clarify, stop, and ask them to repeat. But also it is like certain amount of time, right? Like you have to get to that kind of mode, right? That kind of, okay, they speak and then stop. But we have other kind of difficulty, right? Yes, we cannot ask them to stop and clarify. But for our working environment, sometimes it's like you cannot, they don't just talk like 3 or 4 sentences and stop. Sometimes they just keep going, and you have to remind them, right? We have to keep reminding them. And also they are using a lot of forms or documents, as I mentioned, right? Because they were working with the client. So those are the different kind of, challenges that we are facing compared to this example, okay? So definitely we will have different challenges, but I just want to give you some of that, kind of feeling in that moment. You have to really pay attention right now and try to think about that term or word into our own language, right? Kind of doing that.
So it's kind of stand. What do you call before? We have like 2 different interpretations.
Simultaneous. The other one, yeah, the one that we are not talking about.
Yeah,
like not using. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think like this case is kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, but at least they stop for you, right? But the simultaneous, they don't stop. They just keep talking, and you have to keep.
They stop. I thought you stop for us.
No, they. I mean, yeah. In this practice, we stop it. I think like we try to do. I mean, like not me. I got it from online, and they kind of create this kind of exercise or practice for for us. So. Okay, thank you for that feedback. Just give you some, sense of that. But here's, I have 2 more slides, and then we can, do more next time. But the other 2 slides I want to really make sure we got into is timely communication, right? As I mentioned, like interrupt, right? That's one thing. But after the meeting, for example, if you say, if you really try to slow them down, right, repeat and still, right, I mean, they don't do that, or they are not really cooperating with you, you need to communicate, right, back with them, so that they know there's some problem within, right then or like after as well. If you notice any communication barrier, you should really clearly indicate that and talk about that as interpreter, right? You can say, as interpreter, I think the client do not understand your question.
or the term you are using, right? Or like, again, like really communicate that so that, the two sides, right, really understand each other and clear about what the other side talking about. And you have to alert, right, the provider if that happens, because it's a cultural understanding, right, as well. And maybe asking different way, right, or explain the term, or asking clarifying questions. So I think I think already we talked about that, right, in terms of cultural broker, right, mediation, right, all of that. We need to timely communicate that. And also, like I said, right, interrupt, hang on, please, as interpreter, can you stop? As interpreter, can you repeat? Can you slow down? Can you speak louder, right? So we can, very, politely, gently, but firmly ask them for those things. And if we need to clarify, because we don't even understand, right, then we need to clarify certain thing in order to communicate it well. So those are all of the slides I have today, and I realized that, I didn't introduce myself. I just jumped in right away, and my apologies for that. I know we, some of you may know me, some may not. But again, I just want to, do a quick, sorry, last minute, but quick introduction. So that I know you better. But yeah, my name is Hướng, and I am the co-interim director right now at the agency, and I work a lot more on program, and we have a lot of different programs here at the agency, and my previous life in Vietnam, I did a lot of interpretation and translation in Vietnam, but also, do a lot of other things. But I feel much better with translation because I did like legal translation for like, a firm for like a few years for, legal projects. So I feel like I'm better with translation because, it requires kind of different skill, right? And we will talk about that, right, on the next, on actually tomorrow. Oh my goodness, so fast, tomorrow. But I do a lot of interpretation back in Vietnam as well as when as coming here in this country. I've been working with APS a lot, right? Which is like Albuquerque Public School System, and also Rio Rancho Public School, and also other venue. So, but it's a learning process. We do not know everything. We have to keep learning every day, because that's language, right? And different area, different technical, we have to learn and prepare before any appointment. So can you quickly like talk about yourself? I know we have only 5 more minutes, so can you each like talk, 30 seconds, just help me to know better a little bit who you are. I mean, like, since I'm gonna just call our name, but then you can pick the next person. Is that okay? So that we can go through everyone. Okay, yes. Thank you. So Pawin, can you start?
Harwin, yeah, Harwin.
Sorry, Pawin.
Harwin. Okay, Harwin. So you said introduce yourself, right? Sorry, can you repeat it? What should I do?
Yes, just please help me, with your name. Definitely I know you much better than other, but your name and what community are you coming from?
Okay, my name is Parveen and last name is Hussaini. I'm working with the APS as a specialist, newcomer specialist, and also I'm working part-time with the Catholic Charities as a Dari and Farsi interpreter and translating.
And can you, kind of tap on the next